Welcome to the Light the A Sports Podcast, home of the top interviews of Aggie Sports Nation.
Former Utah State basketball head coach Rod Tueller. Utah State gymnastics coach Kristen White. Well, welcome to the program, John Eccles. Ashley Cardozo. Welcome to the program, former Utah State running back Emmett White. How you doing?
And now, here are your hosts, Jason Walker and Eric Frandsen.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Light the A podcast. Jason Walker, Eric Frandsen. Today we've got another great guest from the Utah State men's basketball history. He played 4 seasons with Utah State from 2007 to 2011. He was actually a member of both of Utah State's only 30-win seasons in program history. He was 6-time WAC Player of the Week, a 2-time All-WAC selection, 2011 WAC Player of the Year, and in that 2011 season was also an honorable mention All-American. And if I'm not mistaken, he's also the only player in the Aggie record books to be top 10 in school history in all 5 main statistical categories: points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks. Also had a professional career from 2011 to 2020, playing in pro leagues in the Netherlands, New Zealand, Australia, France, and Puerto Rico. Welcome to the show, Tai Wesley. How you doing?
I'm doing great. That was a great intro. That was a mouthful.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
When you have a career like yours, it's hard to get it all in.
Yeah.
You didn't have to get everything.
I didn't get everything. There's stuff
We left out you were Mr. Basketball when you were in high school. I mean, we can keep going.
I almost didn't include the pro stuff. I almost didn't include the pro stuff because there was already long enough the stuff you did at Utah State, let alone what you did as a pro. So, yeah, nice, long, and distinguished career. And I guess now retired for a few years. What's it been like there? Finally done with more organized basketball. I'm sure you're still playing.
It's been terrible, to be honest. I miss basketball every day. I miss the feeling of getting nervous before a game, of that anticipation. I miss, the camaraderie with my players. But it's been a good transition. The pros of not playing anymore are definitely being home with my family, seeing my young ones get a little bigger and have those milestones. So there's trade-offs here and there, but life is good.
So you came to Utah State out of Provo High School. I know that's Stu Morrill's his old stomping grounds, and he did a pretty good job of getting great talents out of Utah County. And let's just start there with your high school career and that how that recruiting went, choosing Utah State because your older brother played for BYU. So what was it that kind of was appeal to you to go to USU rather than following your older brother's footsteps?
Yeah. So the funny part about that is I actually committed to BYU. I verbally committed to BYU, but they kind of did me dirty on a scholarship where they offered me a scholarship and then gave it to somebody else, kind of took it away and said that I wouldn't have a scholarship for the first year I went. And that really sat poorly with me. It put a real bad taste in my mouth with BYU. And so I uncommitted to them or decommitted and I was kind of left optionless because everyone else had used up all their scholarships. And so I went through my high school, my senior year, and fortunately enough, we had some success. We won state, and I was Mr. Basketball, which opened up some more doors after the season. So I had to sign late, and what drew me to Utah State was Coach Morrill. He and my high school coach were really close. They were best men at each other's weddings. And so, Coach Morrill came in, and his honesty and the way he approached it was just a breath of fresh air for me. And so that's kind of what drew me to playing for him. I didn't have a great experience in Logan when I was younger, but that all changed when I went on my visit and then went up to school there.
So you say you didn't have a good experience in Logan? That was like high school going up there at some point?
No, so I was probably 12, 13, and I went up for a BYU Utah State game to watch my brother, and I hated the Spectrum. I did not like the fans. They were on my brother the whole game, and it was I was just like, man, I hope I never have to come back here.
That's a weird thing to hear for a guy who wound up playing like 140 games for the Aggies. I guess they just kind of turned around after playing.
Well, it's different when they're cheering for you. So so my brother played for BYU, and how Utah State, we hate BYU, and so the whole game they would chant Wesley, 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 you suck, and I'm sitting there like, oh, these guys are feral. And then when on the flip side, when New Mexico State would come in town and our fans would just berate them, it was amazing. I loved it, and I felt like we would never lose at home. So definitely two different experiences.
So you come to Utah State, you redshirt for a year, right? Then you go on and serve a mission. Just getting your timeline correct?
Yep. So 1 year redshirting that was JC's freshman year, and then hit 2 years in Mexico as a missionary.
And then, so you come back, and J.C. Carroll is at the end of his career, and you show up, and then there's kind of a baton kind of gets handed off, and you become like this. The new movement that goes on is really the competition in the WAC is really fierce, different than it was in the Big West. But what was that like, kind of coming into this roster after your mission? Things look very different with the cast of characters on that team, and then kind of finding your place with that team.
Yeah, so what comes to mind when you ask that question is, so I remember I got off my mission and I called JC and I said, JC, what's it look like at the power forward position? Because that's where I want to step in and be the starter. And he said, you're probably not going to start this year, Ty. He said, there's a guy. He's going to be a senior. He was a junior, and he started every game as a junior at that spot, and that was Steve Ducharme. And I said, all right, JC, I see what you're saying, but I'm going to take his spot. And so I came in, and we started out the season 5-5. Steve started at those first 10 games, and then Coach Morrow made a change, and he put Tyler Newbold and myself in the starting lineup. And from then I think we went on a 10-game winning streak or something. And from then on, I didn't lose my starting spot. Neither did Tyler. So for the rest of our careers, we were able to be starters.
So, right, so that freshman year, obviously, you guys had a good season, but then, the very next season, after JC left, you think, you lose the all-time leading scorer, maybe a team takes a step back, but you guys won like 6 more games. You had a 30-win season. Like, what was that like, being a part of some of the greatest teams that have, at least in terms of win totals, that the program's really ever seen? Yeah,
I remember the whispers around town. Oh, JC's gone. They're going to have a down year. It's a rebuilding year. And the guy who drove us, who was the captain, who was the leader on that team, was Gary Wilkinson. And I remember Gary hearing the whispers. We talked about them, and we said, all right, let's show everybody that, we're going to be just fine, and we're going to go out and win a lot of games and win a couple more championships. And so he was the leader then, and I was fortunate. I had JC as the leader my freshman year and Gary the leader my sophomore year, and that kind of helped me see how I wanted to be and how I wanted to lead when it was time for me to be the leader my junior and senior year.
So you mentioned being on the floor when New Mexico State was in town and hearing that Spectrum, student section and the crowd. I mean, those were just magical years during that stretch when you were there. And you guys rarely did lose on that court. I mean, just from a player perspective. And I think this year we're starting to see some of that come back. We're seeing good crowds and great energy. But when you were there on the court, kind of walk us through, what was that like for you being in the midst of that? And I know it's supposed to be a challenge for the opposing team, but can that be challenging for the home guys too, with that the volume and everything that's going on in the stands?
Oh no, there was nothing challenging about that. That was, like you said, magical. It was. I mean, we really had the feeling that we could beat the Lakers at home. Like we at home, we were untouchable. And I lost one game in 4 years at home. And it just seemed like it didn't matter if we were down a little bit or down whatever, we were going to find a way to make those plays to win. And I don't know, there was maybe an overconfidence, but I always felt so confident that we were going to find a way to win at home, and we did. And it just, we'd go in there and it would happen, and it was, I don't know how to describe it other than I just felt like we knew we were going to win every single time we were at home.
So I want to ask a question kind of about your playing style, because we were on our show probably a couple weeks ago. Utah State had just lost a game, and we can always get kind of down after the Aggies lose. And there was a question that came up. I think one of our texters asked it. It was like, if there was a player from Utah State history you could put onto this year's team, who would it be? And, there's a long list of names that you could go through. There's JC, there's Wayne Estes, but there were a handful of people that said we want Tai Wesley on this team. And it's like, because they always love, your toughness and your style of play, even if they might say some of these other guys are maybe better players in history. But, what does that speak to your style in terms of people would want you on this team rather than maybe some, big scores like, Carroll or Estes?
I see that. I can see that. I've followed the Aggies probably closer than I ever have this year. And I don't know why that is, but maybe because they've played really well. I don't think they need a ton of scoring. I think they have that scoring, and definitely they have the 3-point shooting. Right, they're top in the nation at their 3-point stuff. What I see them missing a little bit is that grit, that dirtiness. Who's going to mix it up, and who's going to throw an elbow to somebody's jaw or throat, or who's going to make the big stand. And then also, if I could play and they could just have an option where they just throw it in the post and have a guy either go get a bucket or create a double team and get an open shot for their perimeter shooters. I think that would take them over the hump of getting to that Mountain West Conference championship. So I can see why people say that, and I feel the same way. Although maybe that's just my big-headedness.
No. You were one of the guys that I was advocating for, just because of your, as you've described, kind of your grit, your style, and not to say you were a dirty player. I'm not going to suggest that.
At times I was dirty.
If you're going to admit that, that's fine. But I mean, just the way that you were tough. You were tough in the post. You wouldn't take anything from anybody. And if Utah State needed to play, physical and a little bit gritty, we all knew that you would be the guy in there mixing it up, and opposing teams knew that there's a guy in the low post that you can't. He's not going to take it easy on you. So I think that's one of the things that this team kind of misses, and I wish they could kind of take some of that from you, what they were able to and help them in this season. But that was one of the really fun things that I enjoyed watching you play. It just I remember there was I think it was a WAC tournament. I remember it was at the Orleans Arena, and I can't remember who the opponent was, but they were just, just so convinced that they just had to keep it out of the hands of the point guard, and on any inbounds play. And Stu Morrill's like, fine, just give it to Tai. You can bring it up the court, and you handled it calmly, and teams would try to rattle the Aggies with taking the ball out of the hands of the point guard, but you were skilled enough and confident enough that you could do so many other things on the court than just be a low post scorer. And I thought that really was a highlight of your career that really kind of expressed with what you were able to do.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So one thing that I kind of try to do when I'm not playing in a serious game is to try to develop those guard skills. And fortunately, I was able to do that. Being the foreman, I would always inbound it, and if there was pressure, they'd throw it back to me. So I had to make decisions under pressure. I had to be able to dribble, and because I had those opportunities in college, in my professional career, I had the same opportunities where if I got a rebound, I could just go and make the decision as a point forward. And you see how the game's evolved, where LeBron James is a point forward because he can do everything, and that's kind of what I was trying to do as well.
So I want to ask about one specific highlight in your career. I know there was a while back they were talking about great dunks in Utah State history, and someone brought up you absolutely posterized a BYU defender. I can't remember who it was.
Chris Collinsworth.
Chris Collinsworth, that's what it was.
He remembers.
I'm looking at the videos. Like, it just seems like you remember that pretty well. Like, it's how satisfying is you're not just getting a dunk, but, dunking it over a player. That's a feeling I'm never going to have ever. So, but describe for us mortals what it's like, dunking on somebody like that.
Okay, so I never thought I'd have that experience. I mean, everybody knows my athletic ability was not on par with Brady Jardine's. So if I got a dunk, I was elated. And the stars just kind of aligned perfectly that night for me to dunk on. And the bad thing is, I wish it was a different BYU guy, because I actually like Chris Collinsworth. He was a teammate in high school. He went to Provo High as well. But the stars kind of just aligned. The moment was right, and the lane kind of opened up. And he tried to, instead of trying to block me, he tried to take a charge. And the fact that it was BYU made it so much sweeter. But yeah, that's my only dunk ever, and I'm glad it was on video, and I can show my kids, hey, I was this crazy dunker, because the reality was I wasn't a very good dunker at all. Probably, like, in terms of ranking on our team, there's 10 guys. I'm probably like number 10 in dunks, but I had one great moment that'll hopefully live on so I can show my kids.
So, you progressively, as you kind of mentioned earlier on, as a sophomore, just coming back from a mission, you were able to still get into shape and make an impact on the team and start getting into the starting minutes. But even watching you kind of evolve as a player, where instead of being a contributing starter, you became a leader on the team. What was that process like for you, and what was that like being mentored by Stu Morrill in that process?
Well, I credit Stu for all the success I had in college. And in his system, he sets his players up to succeed, where we had a billion plays, and he said, okay, Ty needs the ball in this position for him to succeed and for us to succeed. So he would make a play up for me to have it that way. And as far as the process of me getting to be that leader, it came very naturally in Stu's system. And like I said, I would have to attribute it to Stu and to the guys before me. I mean, before my mission, I had Spencer Nelson, Nate Harris every day in practice. After my mission, I had J.C. Carroll as the leader of our team. Then I had Gary Wilkinson as the leader of our team, with guys surrounding me. I wasn't the sole leader on that team as a senior, because I had Matt Formasano, who had the same amount of time with me. He did the red shirt year before his mission, did his mission, and then did 4 years after, like I did. Tyler Newbold, 4-year starter. Pooh Williams, a 4-year starter, or a 3-year starter. Nate Bendel, who was a JUCO guy, but Brian Green, who came in, and we all, so I had these guys. It wasn't like I was having to wrangle these 18-year-olds. We were an older team. We were mature. We liked each other. We got along. So it was a very easy team to lead, because we all knew our roles, and we played our roles really well.
I'm glad you brought up those teammates, because one of the things I did want to ask you is I distinctly remember during that time Stu Morrill on numerous occasions praising the character of his team. And that you guys were just quality people, besides just great athletes and a great team. And just he was always quick to compliment just kind of the character of the team as a whole. And just how did you feel about that? Just with those guys, and was that a pretty accurate depiction from Stu?
For the most part, there was a couple guys like that. That Tai Wesley guy wasn't very good, but I was probably the weak link of those guys. My senior year, the high character individuals that were with me were top of the line. Matt Formasano, the guys I trust with my life. And even Gary Wilkinson, I trust with my life, my wife, and my finances. And I could say that about every one of those guys.
So just looking at some of those teams, you have 3 straight years. 2 of those were 30-win teams. Probably one of the best 3-year runs in program history. I'll ask you, which of those teams do you feel like was the best out of those three? I'll ask the trap question. Which one of those three teams would come out on top if y'all magically managed to play a little tournament together?
Ooh. So that's tough. Gary was tough. He was fun to play with. I would probably give the edge to my sophomore year team. But that's tough because my senior year team, it was just different. So my sophomore year team, Gary, me, Jared Quayle, Pooh Williams, Tyler Newbold, that was our starters. We had Stevan Williams off the bench coming to shoot. Where my senior year, we had Brian Green was our Stevan Williams, who'd come off the bench and just light it up. And Brady Jardine was, a freak off the bench too my senior year. So we're probably a little deeper my senior year, but my sophomore year, Gary would probably give us the edge in the starting lineup.
And how much do you think you would beat this year's team by?
We'd beat them up. We'd for sure beat them up. No, I don't know. I think they'd light us up, to be honest. They were tough. I don't know. The game's different, but I think we'd still beat them by about 10.
Do you think that modern teams kind of just have this, inherent advantage? Because you talk about, if they played each other, like, it feels like modern teams with their three-point shooting might have an advantage that way. Like, is it, how hard is it to maybe compare, like, I say, like, would the 2010 team beat this year's team? It feels like a tough question to ask because, you mentioned just how different the game is.
Yeah, analytics have changed the game quite a bit, saying, the best shot in the game is a three-point corner three. And so you either shoot dunks or three-pointers and nothing in between. So it's definitely changed the game quite a bit. Would be difficult. It's fun to talk about, though.
Do you think you would have shot more threes if you'd, come into the game a little bit later, closer to now? Because, you shot, I think, 12 threes in your college career.
Yeah, I definitely would have. Well, and as I went on with my professional career, I became, I did shoot a lot more threes. I think my last year I probably averaged four threes a game. So, yeah, I added that as I went on. But, Stu always wasn't a fan of me shooting threes, so I didn't shoot very many in college.
You made like 7 out of 12. Maybe you should have shot.
It's not a bad percentage.
That's a really good
percentage.
Yeah.
That would have led the nation had I shot that every game.
There you go.
Call me Stephen Ashworth.
So you mentioned professional career, and I wanted to transition into that. After finishing with Utah State, you had an opportunity to work out in the NBA. It was the Timberwolves, is that right?
Yeah, Timberwolves.
Was it just a pre-draft workout? Did you get a summer league with anybody?
So it was an interesting year. It was the lockout year, so there wasn't summer league at all. Teams were pretty tight with workouts, so it was just kind of a pre-draft workout. I went in with Derek Williams, who they ended up drafting second overall. Is kind of who I got matched up with in our workout. Busted him up though. So
he was an athletic guy. He was athletic and powerful. That's like the only reason he got drafted second.
Athletic. Yeah, it worked in my favor though. I gave him a couple shot fakes. He went flying. I was able to make him look not that good, so they only took him second overall.
That's why he ended up being a draft bust too.
Right. So after that, you go to Europe and pursue opportunities there. What was that like for you? And there had been a couple other Aggies that were having some success in Europe. What was any relationship there? Any pointers that you received from them?
Absolutely. So I actually signed with the same agent as Gary and Spencer Nelson. They kind of pointed me in his direction, and he was good for me for my first portion of my career. So, yeah, they definitely helped me. And then Gary and I actually played for the same team, not on the same time. So Gary left, and I came in New Zealand, which was really cool because we were able to know a lot of the same people, and the organization was amazing. So he set me up really well with that.
So I obviously had a chance to play with a lot of different teams, Europe and also in around Australia, New Zealand. Like, did you have like a favorite place to play? Seems like you settle a lot on New Zealand and Australia, but obviously those weren't the only ones. Like, which one do you feel like you enjoyed the most?
Oh, man. So as far as living, I enjoyed New Zealand the best. It was, New Zealand was beautiful, close to the beach, loved it. Australia was great because we had a Costco 20 minutes from our house. And then as far as a player, I liked Puerto Rico a lot because we would play 3 games a week, so we'd never practice. And then if we did, practice was like recovery. So it was like a player's dream, just play games instead of practice.
When you're in Puerto Rico, who were you playing against? What was that league like?
The league was tough. Played against a guy, I don't know if you guys remember Greg Smith. He was at Fresno when I was there. He was in the NBA for the Rockets a little bit. He was out there. Carlos Arroyo was playing. It's a good league. It's fun. A lot of high-level Europe guys go there after their season. It worked out well for me because Australia kind of finishes earlier than Europe. So the timing was right where I finished Australia and then jumped over to Puerto Rico.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, you had an opportunity. One of the teams you were with, and I don't remember which team. I think it was when you were in Australia. I'm not sure. You can correct me on this, but you had an opportunity to come to America with that team, do some preseason games against some NBA clubs, and you got to play in Salt Lake City.
Oh, yeah. So in Australia, they have a preseason connection where we get to come play, and I played 2 games in the NBA. Unfortunately, I didn't get Salt Lake City. I wanted Salt Lake City bad. A couple other teams in our league did. But I got to play against the Thunder in OKC, and we lost by 1, which was heartbreaking. And then the Suns, we played as well, and we lost by 5 on that one.
So how much do these, the NBL teams get up for those preseason? Because the NBA sometimes they're not really caring about those games. They're just throwing, roster fodder out there sometimes. Like, for the NBL, though, that's a chance to really showcase what's actually become a pretty good league down there.
Oh, yeah. So we would definitely get up for these games. I mean, you get the scouting report, and my matchup was Carmelo Anthony. I was like, okay, all right. I know a little bit about this guy. So we would get up for them. They would. The Suns felt like they weren't that up for it. Devin Booker didn't play. But when we played the Thunder, I mean, Carmelo and Paul George and Russ Westbrook all played over 30 minutes. So it was like, oh, we actually got a good shot of them.
What was that like? I mean, did you feel like this was kind of your pseudo NBA moment, or just, hey, we're just out having fun and competing against some of the best in the world?
It was kind of like a dream, This is what you dreamed of, playing professional basketball on U.S. soil against the guys you watch on TV. The guys, I watched Carmelo in his NCAA run with Syracuse, so it was like, man, this is cool. So it was a surreal moment. But then you also want to perform, and when I played against Carmelo, I was like, oh, I want to see what he feels like. I want to see how strong he is and see if he can guard me in the post. And so it was all of those things, wrapped up.
Did you, in the course of your career, and then we've kind of talked about your playing style as a guy in the low post, but as you move on into these professional ranks and you move up in different levels of competition, the traditional power forward looks different at this level because of size and athleticism. Did your role change and evolve over time as you played professionally?
It did, and it's kind of one of those things that I spoke to earlier. I had to shoot the 3. I had to be a stretch 4 on certain teams, and so my big advantage that I felt playing, overseas was if the guy was bigger than me, I would take him outside and either shoot a 3 if he didn't close out, or go by him and shoot a little floater. And if he was smaller than me, I'd take him in the post and post him up. And so I was able to, by adding that long range shot, I was able to have, some kind of plan against every player that I went up against.
So do you feel like maybe outside of, having a 3-point shot in college, you were pretty much kind of a modern forward in a sense that you could do a little bit of everything. You could score, you could pass, you could rebound, steals and blocks. Like, do you feel like that helped prepare you for, obviously, you kind of were in the years where the power forward really transitioned into, I guess, just being a bigger wing in some sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I wish Coach Morrow didn't hold me back so much. I would have shot threes like Steph Curry.
In college, if you shot 5 threes a game, do you think you would have shot like 30%?
Oh, for sure. Because I feel like I have a good gauge on shot selection, so I'm not going to shoot contested ones. So I definitely feel like I would have shot a good percentage from 3. But that being said, and Coach Morrow's thing was always like, "Okay, are you a better 3-point shooter or a better post-up player?" I'm like, "All right, Coach, I'm a better post-up player," and so he would make me feel like nobody on earth could guard me in the post. So why would you go out and shoot threes? Go catch in the post, and if somebody doubles you, then you're getting Tyler Newbold or Brian Green or Jared Quayle, an open 3 who's a better 3-point shooter. And I'm like, all right, it makes sense.
Did you ever get a stink eye from Stu after you shot a 3? I know you only did a handful of times. But.
Never. But I always shot them at the right moment. I think we were up by we'd be up, and the shot clock was running down, so I'd get them up.
It was kind of like Dan Atkins' 3 the other night. It was just might as well put one up.
Might as well.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
You, how's your nose these days?
Oh, man.
You're a guy that suffered so many broken noses.
Well, I've had 7 broken noses. And the worst one wasn't at Utah State. Actually, the worst one was in New Zealand, which completely flattened my nose. But I got it fixed here in Pocatello, and the guy said, if you ever do this again, I will not fix your nose. It'll just have to be broken forever. So I'm trying to protect it.
Oh, my gosh.
So did you ever wear a mask?
No. I don't play like I used to play. I'm not that jerk like I used to be. I'm not the bulldog, the pit bull that I used to be. I kind of, in my old age, I've gotten soft. I kind of try to make friends with everybody on the court.
That's truly modern basketball there.
So is that why you had so many broken noses? You were mixing it up a little too much?
Oh, yeah. I think the scouting report on New Mexico State was to break my nose in that my junior year in Nevada. I think they got it twice in one game.
Oh, gosh. So those were incredible rivalries. I know Nevada was tough, but New Mexico State seemed like it wasn't just that they were good basketball, but it was gritty basketball. I mean, does any of those games stand out to you more than others?
Oh yeah, it was. So that was that game where they broke my nose twice in the WAC championship. That was rough. That's kind of the one that stands out as a nightmare. But beating them my senior year at home and cutting down the nets right in front of them, that I will remember forever. And then the big one was beating my sophomore year. We're in Nevada, the WAC tournament's in Nevada, and they have a really good team, and we beat them on their home court. That was special.
So I kind of want to go back to obviously your, bulldog, tough mentality. Does that develop at some point, or is that just personality and you just kind of morphs your basketball game? Like, where does that kind of develop for you in your process of growing in basketball? At what point do you kind of become that, tough guy, throwing elbows, throwing your weight around kind of thing?
It comes from 18 years of getting beat up by 4 older brothers. I have 4 older brothers, and 3 of them played Division I basketball, and I was, the younger one, and I was getting bullied and beat up and made cry for years. And so when I wasn't playing against my brothers, I felt like I could be that. I could be that bully, that mean pit bull that would go out and get things done and intimidate others.
So did you model your game after anybody in particular, either after your brothers or somebody in the pro level?
No, I definitely modeled my game after my brother McKelly, who played at BYU. I remember watching him as a boy, in elementary school and junior high, and just wanting to be like him. And he was tough, he was gritty, and he didn't mess around either. And so I definitely emulated his game.
So you you play professionally. You make several different stops, or really around the world, playing professionally, and then you just retired just a few years ago. So what are you doing now?
So, what am I doing now? So I own a building company up in Pocatello where we're building residential homes, single-family homes. And so I'm selling homes, and our team is building them. And I got 4 young kids where I'm trying to coach my son's 7-year-old basketball team and have a white picket fence and sail off into the sunset happily ever after.
So I know you mentioned kind of at the top of the show, it said that, you miss basketball. It's, with that kind of feeling, like, how did you go about making the decision to hang it up, and make those trade-offs that you mentioned kind of at the beginning?
When it came time, COVID was a big factor. I had 2 years left on my contract. I signed a 3-year deal, and I completed 1 year of that. Then COVID hit, and so the league was the Australian League was very uncertain of what they were going to do. And for an American to travel there with his family, they'd have to quarantine and do all these things, and I didn't want to put my family through that. And so it all just kind of felt right to step away. Talking with my wife, China, we just felt like it was the right time, even though I wanted to. I had something to prove that next year because I didn't have a great year the first year. I didn't get to choose. It kind of just felt like it was the right time to do it, and so we just decided together that was time. And looking back now, it was the right time. I'm grateful for the years I had, but it's probably time for me to move on.
Tai, you had mentioned playing hoops as a young man, as a kid, with your older brothers or against your older brothers, but you did have an opportunity to play alongside them. When you had an opportunity to play for the Guam national team, what was that experience like?
Well, it's not done yet. I actually leave a week from tomorrow to go to Mongolia to play for the Guam national team again. So I still have a little bit of hope to keep playing, but playing alongside my brothers was amazing. There's definitely a connection there. We understand each other's games. It's fun. Traveling's fun. Being with them's fun. It's quite the experience to go represent Guam and play with my brothers.
Have you had much of a chance? I know you're up in Pocatello. It's not super convenient to come down to Logan all the time, but have you had a chance to interact at all with the Utah State basketball team the last couple of years?
Not as much as I would like. When I'm there in the summer, I'll drop by the coach's office and we'll hang out for about an hour, talk. I want to start helping them more. I know I've talked to some of the assistant coaches about some recruiting. I know we're recruiting a kid up here in Idaho, hoping to get him, but I need to be better. I'd like to be more involved. It's hard when you have a young family, so not a lot, to be honest, and I'd like to be more involved.
It sounds like you need to come and teach them how to do stuff in the post, maybe.
Yeah, mix it up. Stick your nose in there.
But I guess
that would be the dream, is to work at Utah State and move back to Logan.
Yeah. But I guess, obviously you had a chance to play under Stu. Like, what's your impression of Ryan Odom? I know not all coaches are created the same, but I guess just what's your impression, having played under Stu, and obviously under a lot of head coaches at the pro level, what's your impression of Ryan Odom?
I think he's a player's coach. I think he cares about those guys first and foremost. I like him. I think he's the right fit. I hope he stays a long time, to be honest, because everything that I've seen is what I think Utah State's about. I'm a fan.
Is coaching in your future outside of your 7-year-old?
I'd like it to be in my future. I don't know how it fits just yet, but I would like it to be in my future. I think I have a lot to offer, especially with bigs. I was an undersized big man, so I wasn't the most athletic or the tallest ever, and so I was able to be successful other ways by using my brain and my footwork and understanding of the game. So I would like to help pass that along at some stage.
Would you teach kids to play like you, or would you teach them to play a little more finesse, or would you just go full on, bully ball, I guess you might say?
I would definitely teach him to play like I played at Utah State, where it was, the second you put your gum in your mouth and you step on the court, you're the baddest dude on the court.
I think that's missing a little bit in today's game. So it's gone away a little bit. So that would be helpful, I think. So I think you'd have a place.
Oh yeah, toughness, grit. Things. There are drills and things you can do to help that. You pull out the pads and you beat up your bigs every day with pad work and different things. And I've helped the local high schools here in Pocatello. I've worked with some of the big men at Idaho State up here in Pocatello as well.
All right, well, I think we've just about run out of questions. Thank you very much for your time. I've had a lot of fun talking with you about your career there.
Of course, guys. I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me on the show.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the Light the A podcast.
This has been the Light the A podcast with Jason Walker and Eric Frandsen. Be sure to like the episode and share your favorite part of it. You can also find the show on Twitter at 1069 The Fan.